The hidden garlic secret, how to grow endless bulbs without spending a dime again. Hey there, garden friend. Welcome back to Earthly Delights, the place where we turn simple soil and sunlight into stories of growth, beauty, and peace. If you're here, chances are you love the feeling of life around you. The quiet joy of watering your indoor plants, the pride of seeing your garden bloom, or that earthy scent that reminds you everything is still alive and growing. But today, I want to talk to the dreamers who've ever stood in their backyard or balcony, holding a few cloves of garlic and wondering, why do I keep buying these every year? You follow all the advice, you nurture the soil, you do everything right, yet somehow you're still stuck in the same cycle. What if I told you the real mistake isn't in how you plant, but in how you think about planting? This isn't just a gardening trick, it's a mindset shift. Because once you see garlic differently, you'll start seeing every plant differently. Your monstera, your snake plant, your herbs, even the humble pothos on your kitchen shelf. They all hold the same quiet secret. Nature never asks you to start over, it just asks you to continue. So, grab your coffee, take a deep breath, and let's uncover the hidden garlic secret that could change the way you garden forever. Before we dig in, make sure to subscribe to Earthly Delights and join our growing family of plant lovers who believe beauty doesn't have to be expensive. It just has to be grown with heart. Part 1. The Endless Buying Trap. Why we keep starting over. You know that feeling when you've just finished your harvest? The soil's still warm, the bulbs lined up like little trophies on your table. And yet, a few weeks later, you're back at the market buying more garlic? It feels normal, even responsible, right? Every gardener has done it. I did it for years. We watch tutorials, read the blogs, do everything the experts say. Plant in the fall, harvest in the summer, cure, store, repeat. But somehow the cycle never ends. We keep buying what we already grew, without even questioning why. That's the quiet trap of modern gardening. The habit of consumption disguised as growth. We fall in love with the result, but forget to preserve the source. It's the same pattern many of us have with our indoor plants too. We buy new ones instead of learning to propagate the old. We scroll through garden centers like they're therapy sessions, when the real peace is already sitting in a pot by the window, waiting for us to notice its potential. I used to think that gardening meant constant spending, new soil, new tools, new bulbs every season. But the truth is, the earth doesn't ask for more, it asks for understanding. Garlic, just like your favorite green companions inside your home, doesn't need to be bought again and again. It simply needs to be respected as a living cycle. So before we move forward, I want you to think about this. How much of what we buy could actually come from what we already have? Because once that realization sinks in, your garden and your wallet will never look the same again. Now let's talk about the moment everything changed for me. The moment I stopped buying and started truly growing. Part 2. The wake-up moment, learning from an old gardener's wisdom. It happened on one of those golden autumn afternoons, the kind that smells of dry leaves and wood smoke. I had just finished cleaning up my garden beds, feeling proud of my modest garlic harvest. The bulbs were plump, the skins papery, the result of months of care. As I packed them away, I casually mentioned to my neighbor, Mrs. Ellis, that I'd be heading to the farmer's market soon to buy new seed garlic. She looked at me with a gentle smile, the kind only seasoned gardeners wear when they see you about to repeat their old mistakes. "Why buy garlic?" she asked softly, "when you've just harvested a basket full of it?" Her words stopped me cold. I remember standing there a bit embarrassed, holding a bulb in my hand and realizing she was right. For years, I had been caught in a loop of buying what I already grew. I was treating the harvest like an ending, when really it was just the beginning of another beautiful cycle. That small exchange changed everything. Mrs. Ellis, with her wrinkled hands and dirt under her nails, had shown me the kind of wisdom that doesn't come from books or YouTube videos. It comes from decades of quietly watching nature do what it does best: renew itself. And that moment, that single sentence was like a door opening. I began to see my garden differently. Every bulb, every leaf, every seed, they weren't just products, they were possibilities. Maybe that's the beauty of growing things. The real lesson isn't in the harvest, it's in learning how to begin again. So if you've ever felt tired of starting from scratch every season, stay with me. Because what comes next will show you how to grow not just garlic, but abundance that never ends. Part 3, the infinite garlic loop, discovering nature's multiplying secret. Once that realization sank in, I started looking at my garlic bed with new eyes. Each clove wasn't just a piece of something I'd eat. It was a seed, a tiny promise of more to come. It felt almost magical, this idea that from one clove could grow a whole bulb, and from that bulb, countless more. The math was simple, but the meaning was profound. 10 cloves could become 80, and those 80 could turn into hundreds. In just a few seasons, I could fill an entire garden bed with garlic, all from what I already had. It made me wonder why no one ever talked about this simple truth more loudly. Maybe because most of us grow plants for the short term, we're so focused on the next harvest that we forget nature is already designed to sustain itself. Garlic doesn't need a gardener who buys, it needs a gardener who trusts. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that this quiet miracle of multiplication isn't unique to garlic. It's written into every living thing in your home and garden. Your pothos, your succulents, your mint, all of them have the same instinct to multiply, to keep giving. They just need someone patient enough to let them. That's when I truly understood the rhythm of real gardening. It isn't about conquering nature or managing it like a checklist. It's about joining its cycle. One clove, one plant, one season at a time. When you let go of the idea of constant buying and start letting nature show you how generous it already is, you stop being just a gardener. You become part of the ecosystem itself. And once you do, you'll never see a simple garlic clove or any plant the same way again. Part 4. The real mistake everyone makes, forgetting to save what you've grown. Here's the part that stings a little. The mistake isn't in the soil or the spacing, it's in what we do after the harvest. Most of us, myself included, make the same innocent error. We celebrate our garlic crop, enjoy its flavor, share it proudly, and then we eat it all. By the time planting season rolls back around, there's nothing left but a few small, tired cloves that we don't even want to plant. So we head back to the store and start the cycle again. That's the real trap. Not knowing when to stop consuming and start preserving. It's the same thing that happens with so many indoor plant lovers too. We adore the green beauty in our living rooms, but when a plant grows too large or too wild, we prune and toss instead of saving the pieces that could become new life. We treat our success as an ending instead of an expansion, but nature doesn't work that way. It never wastes what's alive. Every clove, every leaf, every stem, they all hold the potential for something more if we're willing to see it. The earth gives us abundance, not so we can use it all, but so we can learn how to sustain it. Once I realized that, everything changed. I started setting aside the best of my garlic, the biggest, healthiest bulbs, and keeping them safe for next season. It felt strange at first, like denying myself a reward. But when the next spring came and those cloves sprouted stronger than ever, I understood what real abundance meant. True gardening isn't about taking everything you can. It's about knowing what to give back. And when you start saving instead of spending, you're no longer just a grower. You're a keeper of your own future harvest. Part 5, the selection ritual. Choosing the best for tomorrow's harvest. When the time came to harvest again, I treated it differently. No more rushing, no more grabbing everything for the kitchen. This time I approached it like a small ceremony, what I now call my selection ritual. I laid each bulb gently on the table, brushed off the soil, and looked closely. Which ones had grown the strongest? Which felt dense, full, and alive in my hands? Those were the ones I kept aside, not for cooking, but for the future. It's amazing how something so simple can shift your entire mindset. Choosing your seed stock isn't just about saving cloves. It's about honoring your effort, your soil, your patience. It's acknowledging that what you grew this season carries the strength of what you'll grow next season. When you do this intentionally, you start to see your garden not as a series of tasks, but as a living story that keeps unfolding. And this idea goes far beyond garlic. Every plant in your home, from your pothos trailing across the bookshelf to your basil on the windowsill, carries this same truth. The healthiest leaves, the strongest stems, the most vibrant colors, they're your signals for what to save and replicate. You don't need to buy another cutting or run to the store for more. You already have everything you need to multiply beauty right where you are. So as you look at your next harvest, whether it's garlic, herbs, or houseplants, slow down. Take a moment to choose the best of what you've grown and save it with purpose. Because that's how every gardener, no matter how small their space, begins to grow a legacy. Not through endless buying, but through mindful keeping. And once you start, your garden will never stop giving back. Part 6, Storing with Intention, where future gardens sleep. After selecting the best bulbs, the next lesson was about patience, how to store them the right way. I used to toss my garlic into any old basket and leave it in the corner of the pantry, only to find it soft, sprouting, or moldy months later. But when you begin to see those bulbs as living things instead of ingredients, you handle them differently. You realize each one is quietly breathing, waiting for the perfect moment to begin again. Now I store my seed garlic with care, almost reverently, in a cool, dry space where air can flow freely, a wooden crate in the basement wrapped loosely in mesh. The bulbs sit there like tiny lanterns, resting but not forgotten. Every time I walk past them, I can almost feel their quiet energy, holding on to the memory of the earth they came from. And honestly, that small act of mindful storage has changed how I care for all my plants. It taught me that resting is part of growing. Your plants, just like you, need time to pause, to store up energy for what comes next. The same goes for your potted greens indoors. When a leaf yellows or a stem slows down, it's not dying, it's conserving. So, think of your stored garlic as a sleeping garden, one that's waiting for your gentle reminder to wake up again when the season turns. It's a beautiful rhythm. You plant, you harvest, you save, and then you let the future rest in the quiet corners of your home until it's time to return to the soil. That's the secret to gardening that lasts. Care in every season, even in stillness. And when that rest ends, something extraordinary begins. Part 7, Planting for Renewal. When rest turns back into life. When the first chill of autumn touches the air, that's my cue. The resting bulbs, patiently waiting through summer's heat, are ready to return to the soil. There's something deeply moving about that moment, breaking apart each bulb, feeling the smooth paper skin of the cloves, and knowing that each one holds a future waiting to unfold. You don't need fancy tools or complicated timing. Just plant them about 2 inches deep, pointy end up, and cover them with soil like you're tucking them into bed. This is where I always remind my viewers and fellow gardeners. Fall planting isn't an ending, it's the quiet beginning of another chapter. Beneath the surface, while the world above slows down, those cloves are already alive. They're sending out roots, anchoring themselves in the cool earth, preparing for spring long before we see the first green shoots. And even if you don't have a large backyard, you can still take part in this rhythm. A balcony, a raised bed, even a deep pot will do. Garlic doesn't demand perfection, only attention. Pair it with a few lettuce seedlings or herbs, and you'll have a living little ecosystem right outside your window. Every fall when I plant, I think of it as a promise, a renewal of the connection between myself and the earth. Each clove I press into the soil carries the memory of last year's sunlight and the hope of next year's meals. That's the beauty of gardening. Even when everything seems to be ending, life is quietly beginning again, just beneath your fingertips. Part 8, The Power of Multiplying Freedom. When the garden starts giving back. The following summer, something beautiful happened. As I brushed the soil from my newly harvested bulbs, I realized the pattern had finally broken. No more buying, no more searching for seed garlic online. Everything I needed was already in my hands, fresh, vibrant, and free. That's when I understood that gardening isn't just about growing plants, it's about growing freedom. Each bulb I had planted had become a family of its own. From just a handful of cloves, I now had rows of garlic ready to cure, cook, and share. And with every season, the numbers doubled, then tripled. Not just in quantity, but in confidence. I wasn't dependent on the market anymore. I was part of nature's rhythm. That's a kind of wealth money can't buy. It's the same quiet joy you feel when you propagate a pothos cutting or watch your jade plant sprout new leaves from a single node. That's multiplication in its purest form. The reward of patience, the proof of care. It's nature's way of whispering, you already have enough, you just need to let it grow. And there's something deeply grounding about that realization. When you stop chasing more and start trusting the cycle, your garden becomes more than a collection of plants. It becomes a reflection of your own growth. You start giving away garlic to friends, sharing herbs with neighbors, exchanging cuttings with fellow plant lovers. Suddenly, your small patch of earth isn't just producing food, it's spreading generosity. That's the quiet magic of multiplying freedom. One clove, one plant, one act of care at a time. Part 9. Beyond Garlic, Seeing the Whole Garden Differently. Once I saw how effortlessly garlic could sustain itself, it changed how I looked at everything else I grew. Suddenly, every plant, indoors or out, felt like a quiet opportunity waiting to expand. The spider plant that hangs in your kitchen, the rosemary that's been thriving by your window, the peace lily soaking up morning light, they all carry the same secret. They want to keep growing for you if you simply let them. I began to realize that this wasn't just about garlic at all. It was about understanding the language of renewal written into every leaf and root. A single basil stem can be rooted in water and become a new plant. A pothos vine trimmed and replanted can fill an entire room in months. Even the soil itself, when fed with the scraps of our daily lives, regenerates and becomes richer. Nothing in nature asks for replacement, only continuation. That's when gardening turned from a hobby into something deeper, a quiet partnership with life. Instead of seeing my garden as something I controlled, I started seeing it as something I collaborated with. The earth was the teacher, I was the student learning how to listen. And you, watching this, probably understand that feeling. You love watching your plants stretch toward the light. You notice the rhythm of growth and rest. And you know the satisfaction that comes from reviving something you once thought was done. That's the real beauty of it. Realizing that your garden doesn't just grow plants, it grows your patience, your awareness, your ability to see abundance where others see limits. Once you grasp that, garlic becomes more than food. It becomes a metaphor for every living thing under your care, reminding you that everything, when nurtured, multiplies. Part 10. The Gardener's Mindset. From spending to sustaining. The more seasons I lived through with my garden, the more I understood. True gardening isn't about collecting things. It's about cultivating understanding. It's not the number of plants that matters, but the relationship you build with them. When you shift from a mindset of spending to one of sustaining, everything changes. The garden becomes lighter, simpler, more connected to who you are. I used to think success meant having the newest tools, the rarest seeds, or the biggest garden bed. But now I see that real success lives in the quiet cycles. In replanting last year's garlic, propagating a leaf from your favorite indoor plant, or using rainwater instead of the hose. Those small, intentional acts carry more meaning than any purchase ever could. When you realize you already have what you need, you stop chasing and start nurturing. You give your energy to what's alive, not what's for sale. And that's when gardening becomes something spiritual, a reflection of patience, gratitude, and trust. Every new sprout becomes a reminder that life knows how to renew itself. We just have to let it. So whether you tend to a sprawling backyard or a few pots by your window, remember this: your hands already hold everything it takes to create abundance. The same way a single garlic clove becomes a harvest, your care today becomes your abundance tomorrow. And as we move toward the final part of this journey, I want you to carry this thought. You are not just growing plants, you're growing a life that sustains itself. One seed, one clove, one kind choice at a time. The real harvest, growing abundance from within. So here we are, back where it all began. A single clove resting in your hand. It's small, simple, easy to overlook, but inside it lies a lesson that every gardener eventually learns. Abundance doesn't come from buying more, it comes from understanding what you already have. When you save your best bulbs, when you plant with patience, when you trust the quiet rhythm of the earth, you step out of the cycle of spending and into the flow of true growth. That's what this journey with garlic taught me. The real harvest isn't the pile of bulbs you pull from the ground, it's the confidence you grow in yourself. The peace of knowing that your garden, like your life, can sustain itself beautifully when you give it care instead of constant consumption. And maybe that's why we love plants so much, because they remind us that everything we nurture eventually gives back. So whether your garden is a backyard full of raised beds or just a few leafy pots by the window, remember, every green thing you grow is a quiet act of hope. If this story resonated with you, tell me in the comments. What are you growing this season? Have you ever tried saving your own seed garlic or propagating your favorite houseplants? I'd love to hear your experience. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to Earthly Delights for more stories that help you garden smarter, live greener, and grow with purpose. Until next time, keep planting, keep believing, and let the earth remind you that what you have is already enough.